Rev up your engines!
Well, Toyota's bringing back the CHR, and they're bringing it back as an electric vehicle. SUV, fully electric, right? Well, the CHR, there wasn't anything particularly wrong with them when they had gasoline engines in them, other than Toyota had so many similar models that they decided they weren't going to make the CHR anymore. They discontinued the CHR in 2022. They basically replaced it with the Toyota Corolla Cross Hybrid. I mean, they all look pretty much the same, right? Same company. What's in a name, like they said. But now Toyota decided to bring the name back as an electric car. But here's the interesting thing. The new CHR isn't just an electric car. Toyota's not stupid. They realize, as it stands, there aren't that many people that really want to buy electric cars. So the new SUV will be available with just electric battery and electric car. As a plug-in hybrid, as a hybrid car that you can plug in the battery and you can go, judging by Toyota's other stuff, probably about 55 miles on electricity alone, and also a fuel cell powertrain that you can fuel with hydrogen, showing that Toyota's using it kind of as an experiment. You know, they had those fuel cell hydrogen cars in California. It was a massive failure. People who bought them sued Toyota because they couldn't get hydrogen. If you followed that, like Shell had a bunch of hydrogen fueling stations in California, but then later Shell shut them down. They shut them all down. Shell said, there's no money in putting hydrogen in cars. This is a waste of money, so they shut that down. So Toyota's showing you they're using this more as kind of future-type technology. The only thing that isn't future-type technology would be the plug-in hybrid, regular technology these days. You don't have to plug it in to charge it up. You can if you want. And it's got a long range, unlike an EV. It's got gasoline and electricity. They go a really long way. And it's not some crazy thing like, where the heck am I going to find a hydrogen station for a fuel cell powertrain? So they're using it kind of as an experiment, but they're keeping a baseline one. And the interesting thing with that is they're not going to offer just a regular hybrid, which to me is kind of crazy because if you think about it, if you follow it up, regular hybrids outsell like 10 to 1 plug-in hybrids. Plug-in hybrids hasn't really been accepted that much. It's kind of a freaky car. Well, I want an electric car that can go 50 miles, but then it goes on. The people who want electric cars generally want an all-electric car. And the people who don't want a hybrid car, they don't want the hassle of having to plug the stupid thing in. So it seems to be more of an experiment. Toyota more than anything else. Well, Jeep is bringing back the Cherokee. If you follow it, 2023, they stopped making the Cherokees here in the United States, right? Well, now in 2026, they're bringing back the Jeep. It's going to be all-wheel drive, and it's going to have a hybrid system in it. The main reason people bought Cherokees because they wanted something that was zippy. They were very zippy, but back in the day when they had that cash for clunkers, the Cherokee was like the numero uno traded in one because they were gas hogs. So they're bringing it back as a hybrid vehicle, right? Here's the thing. The people who originally bought them, it was a zoom vehicle. They're bringing it back with a 1.6 liter gasoline engine. Yeah, you know, it's going to have all the modern stuff, but still, it is a tiny engine, and they're coupling it with electrification. Now, the electrification is going to be kind of minimal because the 1.6 liter engine puts out 177 horsepower, and the total output is only 210 horsepower. So the electric hybrid is only a boost. It's a 33 horsepower boost. I want to see what happens when these things come up and test out a real one, see what kind of gas mileage it gets. Because from my experience, all the Stellantis hybrids that I've seen were crap. They didn't get much better gas much. It's only giving it a 33 horsepower boost. And get this, 9 pound-feet of torque. Only 9 pound-feet of torque. That's hardly anything, right? So, as usual, Stellantis, some half-assed thing. Oh, we'll make a hybrid one. Is it a real hybrid like a Toyota hybrid? No. That gets phenomenal gas mileage. It'll be interesting to see where it comes out. And the problem is, these things are not cheap. Right? You want to get an upscale overland version, it's $46,000. You want to compare it to a RAV4 hybrid. At a basic trim, the RAV4 hybrid is $2,900 cheaper than the Jeep Cherokee. Now, everybody knows RAV4s are the biggest sellers of the other year. They sold 470,000 in the United States. They sold more of those than Ford sold F-150s. They beat Ford as the crown for the biggest sold vehicle in the United States the other year, right? And do people really think that if a baseline one costs about $3,000 more than a RAV4, the best seller, these things aren't going to be flying off the showroom floor. That's for sure. Here we go again with Stellantis. They think that, they got some great ideas. They're so far behind the curve, it makes your head spin. Well, Mazda's now working on a fascinating El Bizarro engine. It's a hydrogen combustion engine that makes its own hydrogen from gasoline. You might think, my God, how could they do something like that? Well, they've figured it out. It's a gasoline engine that has compression ignition like a diesel. It is a 6-stroke engine. Now, a normal engine has 4 strokes. If it's a regular engine we drive, you can have 2-stroke engines too, like in the old ring-ding-ding motorcycles and stuff. But it is a 6-stroke, and what it does, it can take the hydrogen and carbon and gasoline apart in the engine, burn the hydrogen, then store the carbon that can later be cleaned up. Gasoline goes in, so even though it's burning hydrogen, which burns efficiently, realize that gasoline contains nothing but carbon and hydrogen atoms and all these weird different configurations. But ultimately, it's just carbon and hydrogen. Gasoline goes in the gas tank as regular gasoline. No even carbon dioxide coming out of the tailpipe because it gets rid of the carbon, separates the H and the C and burns the H. It makes hydrogen from the gasoline that's stored in the gas tank using its own heat and a catalyst. It burns the hydrogen and stores the carbon that's removed later. It's a very complex process. If you're curious, do a little Googling. You can see how complicated the system is. So you don't have to have these gigantic hydrogen canisters that you have to refill all the time like gasoline, and there's no infrastructure for that. Let's face it, there are gasoline stations all over the place. And if these guys can figure out how to mass produce an engine that works over time. They don't mass produce them yet, so we never know. But if you put gasoline in it and not even carbon dioxide comes out of the tail, that is a game changer. Now, who knows? If that's the case, then we continue to be using gasoline and it wouldn't be putting out the pollutants that it's putting out. Kind of interesting, Pretty interesting idea. Now, it's a long way from doing mass production, but hey, like I say, if you're interested in the actual technology, do a little Googling. You can read the whole hundreds of pages of how it works, how the catalyst works, how then they're going to take the carbon that's stored. Every once in a while, you take it in to get it serviced, and the carbon is removed. It's pretty interesting technology, I got to say. Well, I guess cats and dogs are getting along more than they used to because now, get this, Mercedes-Benz is in advanced talk about using BMW engines in their cars. Now, from my experience, such sharing of information amongst competitors doesn't often work that well. Look at GM and Ford. Years ago, they decided they're going to work together in a 10-speed automatic transmission. Right? And Ford basically did most of the 10-speed rear-wheel drive transmissions, and then they both used them, and those 10 speeds have proven to be massive failures, all kinds of problems with them, right? So now BMW is trying to sell their turbocharged 2-liter 4-cylinder engines in a bunch of Mercedes, from the GLA class SUVs to the E-class sedans. Now, I don't know. I guess Mercedes, they always make decent engines, but they want to use these BMW 2-liter 4-cylinder turbocharged jobs. And they also say that they could also work together to build these engines in the United States. They presently build them, I believe, in Austria. And they're saying, well, we want to open a factory in the United States. Well, you can see that Trump's tariffs and ideas are starting to get in these people's heads. Because if Mercedes-Benz is using BMW engines and they're actually built in the United States, of course, they'd bypass a lot of the tariffs. They'd make people a lot happier, But I can't just understand why Mercedes doesn't make their own. Mercedes-Benz always made pretty good engines. And why are they going to BMW turbocharged engines, I don't understand it. But, hey, Who knows that these companies, maybe they're finding their engines aren't working so far because launched a new turbocharged 1.4 liter Mercedes builds themselves. Maybe they're having problems with them. I don't know. I still tell people stay away from both of those companies. They're over-engineered, overpriced stuff. They used to be really, you paid, but you got what you paid for. Now you pay, and you still get junk anyway. So, right? Just bizarre why Mercedes would want to use BMW engines when they make their own, but hey, the world's getting stranger by the day. Well, Donald Trump is at it again. Now he's saying he's imposing a new 50% tariff on goods imported from India, right? They have an additional 25% tariff because they're saying you Indians are buying Russian oil, and that helps fund Russia's war in Ukraine. So I guess old Donald isn't happy with Putin anymore since Putin wouldn't cut a deal with him. This 50% tariff hits a lot of stuff, of course, including auto parts. Now, as it stands, we really don't buy cars from India, but we get a lot of car parts from India, right? It's a large country. They make a lot of stuff, right? Now, the Indian government's whining and saying that's going to affect $48 billion worth of stuff. But at the same time, the Indians are saying that we're not going to bend for these tariffs. We're not going to change any of our stuff. In other words, we're still going to be buying Russian oil because, of course, the Russians are selling oil cheaper. The Russians got to sell it to somebody. If you know anything about Russia, one of the only ways that country makes money is petrochemical industry. Oil. They don't produce much of anything. They have all that oil, and they want to sell it to somebody. And the Indians, of course, want to get it as cheap as they possibly can. They all talk about politics here, blah, blah. We're not going to be told, blah, blah. Just forget all that stuff. Like I always say, follow the money. See where the money goes. And they're obviously getting it cheaper, and that's the deal that's going on. They're not really going to change anything. I mean, if you ever checked out the country India, I was just watching some YouTube videos. This guy goes to India and he says, oh, this is the worst country in the world. You got to watch some of that guy's videos. They're absolutely hilarious, but it's kind of sad when you see what it's like in India. He goes to these cities and it's just, I mean, the country's not... It's a pretty poor nation, let's face the facts, right? And to them, money talks. They get cheaper oil from Russia. They're going to buy it. They don't care, right? So, I mean, now Trump's putting this tariff on them. We'll see what happens to it because, hey, if they really get hit by losing a lot of money in sales, well, you know, let's face the facts. They always say, well, we'll sell it to somebody else. If they could have sold it to somebody else, they would have, right? They think there's another market out there for some of the junk they're making. Of course, there isn't. The United States, everything over here gets marked up a ton. They make a fortune selling it. I have seen bicycles made in India that in India you can buy them for $200. Here they're going for $1,500. Giant markups, right? The other countries aren't going to pay that giant markup for it, so get even by selling it to somebody else. They'll find out they got another thing coming. We'll see how it goes. Maybe they'll cut another deal with them. Who knows? But if it's based on them buying oil and gas from Russia, I don't see that changing anytime soon. That's just the bottom line. If they can get it cheaper, they will. Well, Tesla's at it again with their robo-taxis. They want to put out an image, right, that doesn't make sense. There was a Tesla robo-taxi driving around in the middle of traffic. It's screwed up. In the middle of traffic, they have a driver, right? The guy's sitting there. He's not driving it, right? But they got to have a person because they're testing him out. So they want to make it look like, look, it's a robo-taxi. So they have the guy sitting in the passenger seat who's supposed to be watching over. Well, it broke. He had to get out in the median, get out of the passenger seat, climb around the other side, open the door, and then drive the robo-taxi because the robo-taxi itself got confused. Now, it's showing yet again that old Elon is going for form over function. He wants people to see the robo-taxi driving down the road with no driver. But by law, they're testing out these robo-taxis, so they got to have a driver in there to take over if something goes wrong. And in this case, something went wrong. He had to climb out, get on the other side. He should be sitting behind the wheel. Sure, he's not driving maybe, but so if something happens, he can instantly solve the problem, right? But they're so into what does it look like, not the function, but the form, that he's got him sitting on the passenger side. And when something goes wrong, he's got to get out of the car, go around, and fix it. That's just plain stupidity, not safety. But, of course, as you know, it's all about what does it look like. And if they were testing these robo-taxis out with the guy behind the wheel, people would think it's just a guy with a guy behind the wheel, right? But when they see there's nobody driving, it's like a driving billboard. But it's not safe. It just basically shows you that, one, their full self-driving technology doesn't work all that great because they had to get out because they got confused, right? But the fact that the guy was sitting in the passenger seat, had to get out, go around, and then sit on it to get behind the wheel to actually drive the thing, shows that the only thing they care about is an image. They want the image of it driving around, even though this is supposed to be for safety. There's a guy there while they're testing him out. Yet another example of outrageous behavior by Tesla. The safety thing would be the guy's there. Okay, he's not driving. Fine, but he's there in case something goes wrong. Don't put him in the passenger seat because you want to have a rolling advertisement about the self-driving robo-taxi going down the road by itself with no one behind the wheel. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.